first thing what I will show is a dashboard. So if I go to dashboard, it will have two important tabs. So one is running flow and one is completed flow. And again, the dashboard is available at the integration level as well as at the account level. So if you click on the running flow, it will give you the list of all the flows which are currently running. Then it will, if you click on the action, you have an option to cancel the run if you want to. And now if I go to completed flow, over here first you can select the date range. You can go up to last 30 days if you want to, and it will give you all the basic information like what all flows ran in the last 24 hours. If you want to see the error, you can just click over here and it will take you to our error management tool. If you want to dig in into the number of runs, you can click over here. Also, it will give you some basic information like what are the total number of successes, what is the average run time, how many errors have been auto resolved, and so on. Now, if you click on action, you can run this flow or you can edit the flow from the dashboard. Now, let me cover analytics tab. So analytics tab over here again, it is at the integration level. You can select, you can either see all the trends at the integration level, or you can decide which flow you want to see all these trends for. Or you can, if you have multiple groups, you can select your group over here and you can see the analytics for up to a year. So, and it will give you all this information like what are the total number of successes for an integration, what is the average processing time, what are the total number of errors ignored and resolved. So if you want to do some analysis, if you want to do some trend analysis on how many successes versus error your integration experience in 30 days, this is the place where you can do all sort of analysis. Now, let me go back to my flows and let me cover my first flow over here. So this is a simple flow, and the goal of this flow is to pull the context from Acumatica and to store the data into my vector database. And if you see the second step, what I've done is I've included HTTP based API over here, and using integrator IO, you can create your own HTTP based endpoint, which is internal to it, which is all built within integrator IO. And I've just built this particular endpoint so that I can infuse certain errors into my flow. So with one step, I can cover multiple error management scenario. And what I've done is then I'm using this particular option where I'm seeing that even if there is an error, proceed to the next application. And then I do have branching in place where I'm just saying that if the status code is equal to 200, which means that there are no error, throw the data into my database. In case if there are any errors and if the classification is equal to value, pass this error message to my sales team Slack channel. And same thing, like if there is any error into the flow and if the classification is not equal to value. So for all other classification, I want this flow I want this error message to be going to my technical support Slack channel. Let me do one thing. Let me run this particular flow. And so while the flow is running, so this is over here. It is simple. Like as soon as this flow is running, what it will do is, so I know like the error which I've passed over here is which has the classification of value. So I know it will take this route where I'm just fetching my data URI, which I will be covering later. And then I'm just posting my error message into my Slack channel with retry error button. So So again, I will be covering this API in detail when I'm covering all the integrator IO error API. But now let us move to my Slack. And over here, if you just notice that it just, so based on the error message, it just passed all this information, like the source, the classification, the error message, and the error trace key. And you can decide what all information you want to pass. It is up to you. You can decide. And if you notice one thing, I've also created retry error button over here. So what it will do is, as soon as I click on this retry button, what it will do is, it will trigger my next flow, which is, so in the Slack, I've created an app which is listening for that retry button. And as soon as I click that button, what it will do is, I'm using your integrator IO retry API, and it will retry the error. So the flow is like, as soon as you get this particular error, you can go to the source application by clicking this link, which will take you to the error record. You can read the message and you can fix the error over here in your source application, which says that my last name is not three-lettered code. So I can fix my error right over here. I can come back to my channel and I can just click on my retry error button. What it will do is, it will trigger my second flow. If you see now, this flow is in progress. Now, let me do one thing. Let me update the error message using my API. Let me change the error code status code to 403, which is for which is the HTTP status code for forbidden, and the classification is connection. So if I run this flow again, this will take this route and it will push the error message to my technical support team instead of my sales team. And now if I go back to my Slack, and if I go to technical support channel, so I will get this particular error message where it will, again, it will give me all the information which I want to have, like source classification, what is error trace key. And the only difference is that, for example, if instead of retry error, what I've done is I'm having Celigo AI button over here. And I do have another flow in place. So as soon as I click that particular button, what it will do is it will trigger this particular flow, which is listening for that Celigo AI button. It will it will check for, then again I do have open AI endpoint over here. So based on the error message, it will ask open AI to create an embedding. It will, from my database, it will check for, in case if I have any thread from my knowledge base which is similar to this particular issue. It will check from my database, and then finally it will post the message to my Slack channel. So over here, if I click this button, or okay, over here I do have one example. So over here, this is the information, and based on the error message, this is what all information I'm getting, like the resolution step and some guidance. And again, also it is giving me all the Slack thread which are relevant to this particular error message, as well as it is giving me similarity score. So you can do all this feature within, you can build however you want to using integrator IO. So now let me do one thing. Let me go back, and now let me do one thing. Let me cover another flow over here where I'm just pulling a customer from Business Central. And again, I'm using my custom endpoint over here to showcase one thing. Like if I click on this error message, and let me open this error message. And if you see over here, if the classification is intermittent, integrator IO will automatically do auto retry for you. So just wanted to showcase this particular feature which I was covering when I was covering auto resolve. And if I go back, I do have another flow in place for auto recovery. So again, I'm just pulling my context from Acumatica, and over here in my mapping, what I've done is I've I've just given the response code as 429, which is for rate limit, which TP code for rate limit. And if I click on audit log over here you can clearly see that integrator, when integrator IO encounter that particular error, the concurrency was 24, and then it changed to concurrency as 1. So this is the new feature which is available at the connection level. So now let me go back to my slide to cover our error APIs, and then we'll come back to show you some tips and tricks over here. So let me go back to my presentation. And so now coming to errors API, we do have all this error API available. So, so you can get list of all the errors for any specific integration, or you can get all for any flow step. If you want to get detailed error information, we do have APIs available to get all this information. Now for error retry error. Now again, we do have APIs available. So if you remember on one of my flow, I was using this particular retry error API so that I can programmatically retry the error if I want to. Likewise, I do have APIs. We do have APIs available for resolved errors. So for example, if you have already fixed your error into your source application or in your destination application, if you just want to mark that error as a resolved error programmatically, you can leverage this API. And likewise, if you want to get data regarding retry data key and certain information regarding retry data, this is the API which you can use. And we do have Postman collections available for all our integrator IO APIs. So you can review them over here. And in the Postman, to show you one example over here, this is the API which I can use to get list of my flows which have errors. And if I want to get detailed information, this is the API which I can use. And if I just click on send, it will give you the details of the error, like what is the classification, what is the regression key, what is the trace key. And this is what I was using even to send all the error messages to the Slack channel, this API which I was using. So yeah, all these APIs are available. Now, let me go back to my presentation. Let me go to my next slide. So over here, we did cover in detail what is trace key. But now say so trace key will help you to uniquely identify an error. But if you want to override any trace key, you can override. And it makes sense when, say, if you're dealing with one-to-many lookup, it makes sense to override trace key to make it more meaningful. Now coming to data URI template, if you remember when I was on the Slack channel, I did click on view error message, which took me to my error message in my source application, to the error data in my source application. So it was with the help of data URI template. And in a while, I will show you where you can define this data URI. Now, coming to whenever you're dealing with FTP, especially if you're dealing with multiple sources with similar type, it is important to specify the name of the file so that while in case if you encounter any error, it is very easy. You know that, okay, this is the source which is, or this is the file which is causing an error. And now coming to the fourth point, automatically ignore an error. So let us understand this with the help of an example. Say you are exporting customers from your e-commerce into your ERP, and your ERP has multiple subsidiaries. And so in that case, you might get an error saying that subsidiary information is not available, because definitely that information is not available in your marketplace. And you might just want to ignore that particular error. So you can create a post submit hook to ignore that particular error if you want to. So, and this is just one scenario, but yes, if you want to ignore certain error, you can do that using post submit hook. And already I did showcase the last point, which is send error message to Slacks and team. So I did already showcase this particular trick. But one thing what I will be highlighting next is, see, if you are dealing with multiple branching, then instead of sending the error message via branching, you can create a integrator IO webhook, and you can create post submit hook to send the error message to your next flow instead of creating multiple branches, which will make error handling lot easy, especially when you're dealing with multiple branching scenario. So now let me go back to integrator IO, and let me go back to my flow number one. And over here, if I open my export, and if I go to advanced, so this is the place where I can define my data URI template. And the advantage of defining data URI template is whenever I encounter any error, I can directly go to my error record by just clicking this particular link. So it is very beneficial if you define data URI for export or for import step. Second thing over here is to override trace key. So this is the place where you can write a handlebar to override the trace key. So like I mentioned earlier, integrator IO is smart enough to identify a field, and and it will mark that particular field as a trace key. But if you override this particular trace key, it will be a lot beneficial. For example, over here, from the from my customized trace key right over here, I can see that, okay, this error belongs to partner consulting contact. So it gives you a lot more information rather than just using integrator IO default trace key. So, and over here, if you want to even write a handlebar query, you can write handlebar query right over here if you want to. Or maybe if you want to join two different fields, you can. And now one thing what we have, so if you notice one thing over here is we have something called Celigo AI. So, and this is again, this is just currently it is just internal to Celigo employee. So what I can do is I can just say that, okay, can you write a handlebar to join record ID and email? And if I just click next, it should write a handlebar query for me. Again, this is just currently it is just internal to Celigo employee. But yeah, you can you can do something like this. So let me close this. Let me go back. And over here, last thing what I want to show is, like, I'm doing the same thing over here. It is the same concept where I'm pulling the orders from Shopify, first creating a customer and NetSuite. But see, if I encounter any error, so what I will do is, instead of creating multiple branch, say I want to send this error message to my Slack channels, but instead of creating multiple branch, what I've done is just written a post submit hook over here. And if I open this, I'm just saying that, okay, if there is an error, so when the status code is not equal to 200, trigger my next flow. So let me open that. So if I close this, if I go back, and if I go back to my next flow, so I'm triggering this particular webhook, and using integrator IO, you can create this webhook. So I'm triggering this webhook in case if there is any error, and then I'm passing the error message to my Slack channel. So same concept, but if you have multiple branches, it makes more sense to use post submit hook and integrator IO webhook instead of using multiple branches to send your error messages. Let me go back, and now let me go back. And again, the last point which I want to cover over here is this flow over here where I'm getting all my errors. So this is a webhook which I'm sorry, this is the step where I'm pulling. So if I click on preview, I'm just getting the flow details from flow details over here. And if I close this, so over here, again, I just want to highlight all the APIs which we have in place. So if I click on preview, this is the API which I can use to get error details. So we do have APIs available over here. Let me close this. And if I want to get all my result errors, I can use this API and I can get all my result errors right over here. And if I close this, likewise, I do have all these APIs available within integrator IO to get retry data as well as to get request and response data. And if you want to store or if you want to pass all this information to your data warehouse, you can do that for further analysis. That is exactly what this flow is doing. Getting all the error information and sending it to my data warehouse. So now let me go back to my slide deck. And so finally, the key takes away. So we covered error classification, where I showed you like integrator IO will using machine learning and AI, it will classify errors into 8 classifications, which we have. Second thing is efficiency and time saving. So because of this auto resolve feature, imagine the time it is saving, and you can then focus all that time into productive work rather than resolving all the errors which doesn't even make sense. Machine learning and NLP. So we did cover that using NLP, how it accurately it processes like more than 500 million record every month. Now, coming to accuracy, as our ML model is trained on a very large set of data, it is very accurate. And now coming to all this feature like auto retry, error auto resolution, auto detection, and auto recovery, it it helps to enhance accuracy, reduces all the manual intervention, and saves significant time and effort which else would have spent on dealing with all the errors which doesn't even make sense.